because of some people who have chosen to leave our city because of retirement or otherwise. But anyway, with that being said, we'd like to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to ask our not our fire chief, but our police chief, Robbie Russo, to lead us in that pledge. Robbie? Please stand if you're able. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, and again, welcome. Tonight we have a few acknowledgments and a special action item. If you have an agenda, you'll be able to follow us as we do those acknowledgments. I'm going to begin by the special action item, and that is I'm going to read a resolution 2019-77, honoring Councilmember Mike Shelton, since this is his last meeting. And we appreciate his family being here, especially his wife, Marshall, who's supporting him for these last 8 years. And it states, whereas at the regular scheduled meeting on the 17th December 2019, the members of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood Heights took the opportunity to reflect on the 8 years of public service by Council Member Michael L. Shelton. What does the L stand for?
Leslie,
okay. Now we know something else. Whose term of office will end on 6 January 2020, following his decision to not run for re-election. And whereas in 2011, Mike was elected to represent District 1 on the council and took office in January 2012, thereupon commencing a period of stellar public service by Mike with unfailing support of his wife, Marshall, and their family. And whereas throughout his tenure on the council, Mike has been a zealous representative of the interests of District 1, while at the same time recognizing and advocating for the needs of the city as a whole, and working in a wise, cooperative fashion to accomplish the greatest public good. And whereas Mike's unfailing good humor, respectful manner, and thoughtful insight have helped bridge many differences of opinion and often allowed the council to achieve consensus on essentially all of the important issues it has faced over the past 8 years. And whereas, further, Mike's innate desire to do the right and honorable thing in all situations and his willingness to carefully explain his thoughts and concerns regardless of proposed actions by the city during council discussions, has provided a stellar example to the city's elected and appointed officers, staff, and residents of personal integrity and the good that can be achieved through diligence, wisdom, and collaborative teamwork. And whereas, consequently, the council desires to express appreciation to and to honor Mike for his diligent and selfless work on behalf of the city and its residents. Now, there be it resolved by the Cottonwood Heights City Council that the heartfelt appreciation of the city is hereby given to Michael L. Shelton for his efforts on behalf of the city as a city councilman for his past 8 years, with due acknowledgement of the support freely given by Mike's wife, Marshall, and their children to make such efforts possible. So again, please join me in thanking Mike Shelton with a round of applause, please. Yeah. We would like to give Mike one more gift. We've had a little reception for Mike on the other side, and we gave him his own Shelton Boulevard sign he can put up where he wants, and Robbie's promised not to take it down as long as it's not on Bengal Boulevard, I guess. But we have another plaque we'd like to give him. So Mike, come on down. If the council would join me, please, and Tim. Yeah. Mike remembers when we didn't have a city hall. He was instrumental in working with the council on getting a city hall. So plaque honoring your 8 years of service, and again, we appreciate it. Marshall, when you come up with us, get one picture. Come on. We're going to make Shelton make a couple comments, but as he thinks of those words, I'd like to turn the microphone just for a moment over to Chief Watson. So, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the time. It's one of those microphones. Councilman Shelton, I can't believe it's been 8 years, but I vividly recall you addressing the council for the first time, and you had your family here, and you introduced them, and you explained that you understood that this was going to take time, and I appreciated the article that was published that spoke to that. And in the 8 years that you've served, I have watched you spend much time. And I want you to know how much I appreciate when you speak to a topic. It didn't matter if it was a setback or an issue at Valley Emergency Communication Center or fire services. You have been the example of diligence, and you made sure you were prepared for every single thing you spoke to, and I always appreciated the view and global perspective you brought to several topics. One of the things that Chief Peterson has taught us to think about is what our wake looks like and reflect on that. And your wake, sir, it is, your footprints are in Station 110, Station 116, Valley Emergency Communication Center, the ECC Center at our headquarters, and many, many other places. And you've had more than just an effect on the fire stations in this city. You've had an effect on Unified Fire Authority. Our fire chief is a very accomplished and quick study, and he took to you very quickly just through the work at VEC and speaks very highly of you. And I speak very highly of you, and I admire you, and I appreciate you very much. And I just want to thank you for all the things you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to turn microphones over to any on the council on the dais who would like to make any comments. Go ahead. Tim, start with you.
Yeah, I just want to express appreciation to you. I have worked with you for a little over a year now, and I've really appreciated the support that you've given me and the input that you've given me in a variety of different areas. I think one of the things I'm most impressed with in just my time working with you is how you see the whole picture of issues and how that applies to bettering our community. And you're very reflective, and because you see the whole picture, when you make a decision, it's because you've reflected on it and seen the whole picture. And I think that's such a talent that you've had in your work. I also, in one of my favorite books, and I won't quote it too much, but it's the book John Adams by David McCullough. There's a line in there that talks about John Adams being honest and people knew it. And I really feel that way about Mike. You don't have to be around you too long to know that you're a great, honorable, honest person, and you've been a great example to me. So thank you for your service.
Councilmember Bracken and I are having a stare-off. Who goes next? Councilmember Shelton shared very kind words to Chief Watson at our last meeting. I recall him using words like membership, mentorship and kindness and a little bit of wanting to be like him. And I would just like to say that I feel the same way about Councilmember Shelton. He's been amazing to watch and learn from, and I'm sad that we won't be sitting next to each other. I'm sad I won't learn from you anymore, but I do hope that when needed, I can still reach out and seek your wisdom. So thank you.
No, it's hard to believe that it's been 8 years. But yeah, I think one of the honesty is a resounding quality. The other one is standing up for what you believe, and the numerous times over the years in the discussions where you bring in a different insight or perspective. It's a regular reminder that we're council and committee for a reason, because everyone can sometimes look at the same issue with a little bit different perspective, and we need to, as a council and legislative body of the city, take those differences of perspective into account. We haven't always agreed, but I think that at least I hope, at least from my perspective, when you've disagreed with me, it has never been with animosity. It's just been with, we have a difference of opinion. I respect that completely, and that, again, that is something I think that is worth emulation. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to kind of take executive privilege before I call for the motion on the resolution that I read a few moments ago. Any other comments from the audience or staff? I don't want to leave anyone out. Hearing none, just want to reiterate it again. As the mayor, before I became mayor, I've served with Mike for the last 6 years, and I can't emphasize enough that he's a perfect example of what an elected official should be. He mentors when he knows he's not even doing it by his example. He has a moral compass that's impeccable, and always want to do the right thing. You know, I consider him as a good friend, not just of me personally, but as our city. And we're going to miss him, but we're not going to let him go too far. We're going to find some way to keep him involved, even if it's on the pickleball courts. But Mike, we wish you well. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2019-77, honoring Councilmember Michael Shelton for his 8 years of service. It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Michael. We do want to excuse Councilmember Bruce tonight, who's traveling and cannot be with us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton.
I think maybe I'll abstain this time, if that's all right.
And I will vote yes. Thank you. I'll turn the mic over to you, Councilmember.
Well, thank you. I have, if I get past 5 seconds, then I've outdone my son's bet, so I think I may have already made it. I've thought about what to say here, and it's hard to sum up in words my feelings. I always hoped that when we were in this room, we would be doing the business of the city, and so I'm a little bit embarrassed that we would spend so much time on something that's not the business of the city, but I am so grateful for the kind things that have been said. It has been a great experience to serve on a city council. If you know me well, you know that I am not the kind of person that gets this job. It's a job they reserve for people who have a whole set of skills that are not particularly mine. But thanks to some good friends who worked hard and who motivated me to try, I have had the opportunity to serve my community, and it has meant the world to me. I thought today, as I was thinking about what I might say, that I would say this, that I have tried to put a lot into my service. I was mentored by people who did, and who I came to respect for their efforts on the behalf of citizens and businesses and the community in general. And watching them gave me the sense that that this work was really important, and that that I should give it my very best effort. But for all the effort and all the time that I put in, I can honestly say that that I got out of it more than I put into it. And I got that in so many ways that have meant the world to me. And I can tell you this, that I think District 1 will be well represented. It's in good hands. And you will miss me a lot less than I will miss being here. It's just been the experience of a lifetime to have the voters of District 1 give me the opportunity to serve in this way. I also owe a lot of thanks to my family, who have been a tremendous support. And what's interesting about it is that my family has grown as a result of my opportunity to serve. I was thinking of all of the people who I've had the opportunity of working with, and it has been quite a few. 2 mayors and 2 different councils and 3 city managers and public works people, 2 different public works directors, and 3 different PIOs, 3 different chief financial officers, and a lot of them were just one chief and one chief, and so many others, and then a whole host of residents who when you devote yourself to something and you get to know them, they become your family. And I always knew I lived in a great community, but the community that is part of this city family is really special to me, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity. I hope that that connection will never be far away, because it just means so much to me. I came to love all of you, really, but those in service to our community who mean so much to us every day, often in ways that most people don't know or appreciate, but you get to see a little closer when you serve in this capacity. And so many make such an effort to make our community a better place, and what a blessing that is for each of us who live here. Anyway, your words today have been so kind, and I appreciate them so much, And I wish you also, as you have me, the very best, and hopefully our associations will continue. Thank you.
All right. Well, in those comments, you see what we've been able to work with for 8 years. A man who really appreciates the city and loves the city and loves the opportunity to serve. So again, we wish him well. Back to city business. Following the agenda, I will now turn some time over to Dave Muir, our city treasurer, and Scott Durgis, our director of finances, to talk about the CAFR, which is the financial presentation.
I think Dave's my reluctant presenter today, but no, we're going to just go through this briefly. You've got the book in there. There will be a test on it next week, sent out. No, there really won't, but there is a prize for if you actually know what CAFR stands for. Anyone? Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. So some of the pages that I would like to direct you to in this report, and first thing, I really want to thank Dave. Dave works on this, well, from when we close the year, running through different balances and things, and then assembling reports and putting them into the book for a 2 to 3 month solid time period. And it's a lot of work, and it's difficult work, because the financial statements are represented 2 different ways. One is the modified accrual basis, and the other is the full accrual basis. And it's difficult sometimes, as you're doing those 2 reports, to reconcile them back to each other. And sometimes Dave and I have to put our heads together and go, what's this? And we're going, I don't know, and we have to sit here and muddle through something in order to get there. But I will just say that I'm very impressed with Dave and his ability to get through that and do the things that he needs to do. It's not an easy task, and I am very appreciative for the work that he does on that. Is there anything that you want to say specifically on it?
No, it's just my pleasure to serve. Been enjoying it's been an education for me, and when we finally started the CAFR back in 2012, it became a stepped up kind of education. And the best part of that was we had Gary Harmer around who helped write the code that we have to adhere to in writing our financials, because he was on the National Governance Board. And having him just down the hall to explain the details of how things work and why they do it that way was a great education. I appreciate it.
Just a couple pages I'd like to have you look at. One is page 32, which we'll start with, and then we'll go back to page 30 in just a moment. So in this, and the visibility is not super big. I'll make it a little bigger in a minute, but this is, starts off with our revenues, then our expenditures, then other financing sources, which would include transfers out to other funds and so on and so forth. And then finally you get down to your net change in fund balances and beginning and ending fund balances for the year. And it has each of the funds, so the general fund, capital projects fund, debt service fund, and CDRA fund. And I think this is a very good page to look at, because it really comes probably as close to anything as tying out how we budget in the city. It gives you an opportunity to look and see down here at the bottom in the general fund that we added $545,000 to our fund balance during the year. We were actually budgeted to utilize $105,000. So if you add all that together, we're about $650,000 better than what we had budgeted. To put that in perspective, that's about 3.2% based on all of our full expenditures and other financing sources in terms of the change on that. That's getting pretty tight when you're in a government budget situation and you can't spend more than you're allocated in your budget. Getting down to the 3% range is very, very close. And so as you look at that, those are the funds that we have available. If you go backwards 2 pages to page 30, in here you will see a couple of things. Of the $4,283,000 that we have in our budget, it's broken out into several pieces. $15,000 is prepaids that we have. $557,000 is a reserve for paid time off for our employees. And then $3,711,000 is the actual available unassigned fund balance in the general fund. Of that, we're required to reserve 6%, according to our 5% for state statute, 6% for our city ordinance. That amount is just under $1.1 million or $1.2 million. So that leaves about $2.5 million available of that for appropriation during the budget year that we're in. And that's about what we had estimated. It's actually a little bit better. We had estimated to be about $200,000 or $300,000 less than that when we estimated at the beginning of the budget year. So I think that that's one of the areas that I would focus on if you just have an abbreviated amount of time to look at reports in this. Those 2 pages, page 30 and 32, are very good pages to familiarize yourself with. I would really recommend to read through the whole thing. There's a lot of, some of it's very interesting and some of it's a little dry as you go through that, especially when you get around the pension area, that gets a little dry. But I just want to, let you know that the city is in good financial hands. Dave is doing an excellent job. I enjoy working with him, and I enjoy working with each of you. I'll miss interacting with Mike Shelton. Have been happy working with him on the budget committee over the last little while and interacting here, and I just enjoy that, and want to say hope you go on to good and big, better things. Governor? No? I don't know. So anyhow, that's all I have, and we can have the auditor maybe come up.
Well, before we do that,
yes.
maybe you might mention that how many years have we received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting? Is it 7, 8 years straight?
I just wrote a memo on this today.
7 buttons back there, so
Is it 7?
7, and we'll apply for number 8.
Well, I think that's important to note, because as a city council elected official, I don't think there's a greater concern we have than to be assured that the public's money is as well cared for, not just in our budgeting, but also in our reconciling of those expenditures and revenues. Comments from the council?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you want to know what's going on with the financial situation of the city, this is a tremendous document. If you would spend the time to read through this, you will learn a lot about how the city takes care of its money and what it does with its money. And I just would recommend it to anyone. It's a great place to discover what's going on financially in the city. And so thank you for your work on it. It's just a tremendous document. It's great every year, and this year is no exception. And I would just really recommend it to anyone.
Mayor, if I may add, I'll echo, I really appreciate the efforts by Dave and Scott and all the time that is put into this document, into reviewing the numbers, reviewing them again, and about another 15 or 20 or 30 times. Anyway, I just appreciate their efforts, and it's another great example of the great work of our staff here at the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave and Scott both. Not every city gets the clean audit reports and gets the awards, the GFOA award, and the other ones every single year, as we do. It's a very distinct minority, so I appreciate the ongoing and the past efforts.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, let's talk about our audit. And
Do you want me to leave this up? Or? Okay.
Well, if there's any way to ruin the good vibes of a meeting, it's to have the auditor get up, right?
will you introduce your company and your relationship with the city?
Sure. My name's Russell Olson. I'm with the firm Larson & Company CPAs, and we're the independent auditors of the city. So the document that you just saw or was mentioned is is something that we come in and perform certain audit procedures and look it over, and we give an opinion on some of that information. And so that's what I'm here for, and that is to present our audit report, which contains our opinion, and then go over our management letter. So with that, if you'd like to take the bigger booklet that you have and flip over to page 9. Page 9 is our audit report. This is where we just communicate that we've audited the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2019, that the financial statements themselves are the responsibility of the city's management, and it's our responsibility to give an opinion on those financial statements. And in our opinion, I'll just read it because some of the words that the accountants write into these reports are just so eloquent. So I'm just going to read it and then I'll translate it for you. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Cottonwood Heights as of June 30th, 2019, and the respective changes in financial position, the budgetary comparison for the general fund and major special revenue funds thereof for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. Isn't that beautiful? I'm just kidding. Translated, it's a clean opinion. So in our opinion, these financial statements are materially correct. The report goes on to mention some other things there on page 10. Some of the information, where you guys do a CAFR, there's more information in there than is actually required for just basic financial statements. And so a lot of that information isn't necessarily subject to our audit. And so our report kind of mentions that and sort of delineates between stuff that we audit and stuff that we don't. And then it makes reference to the government auditing standards report that I'll actually cover right now. But that is our report on the financial statements. So that's all I have for the big booklet. And I agree that there's a lot of really good information in there, and it would be good to read through that. So if you open up the smaller booklet that you have, here there's a couple of reports that we issue and then our management letter. The first one on page 1 there is the government auditing standards report. This is simply a communication, really, that when we do a government audit, we're required to adhere to certain procedures that you don't necessarily have to adhere to in other audits. One of which is that we look at your internal controls and your compliance with laws, regulations, agreements, the non-compliance with which could cause a material misstatement in the financial statements. And so we look at those things not to give an opinion, but to determine what audit procedures we're going to follow to come to our opinion on the financial statements. And that's really all that report is communicating, that we followed government auditing standards in performing this audit. The next report is our state compliance report. And so in the state of Utah, they require us, as we perform our audit, to look specifically at those things about a third of the way down on page 4. We look at each of those items and make sure that you're complying with the state laws and with respect to those areas. And then we also are asked to give an opinion on those. And in our opinion, the city has complied in all material respects with those things. Again, that's a clean opinion. We'll now cover the management letter, where we can talk about some observations we had, but there's nothing that needed to be reported directly in that document or in that report. So we keep turning the page. We come to communication to those charged with governance. Again, translation, management letter. This would be, had we had any issues with staff or problems in conducting our audit, this is the mechanism that we have to officially communicate that to you as the governing body We didn't have any issues like that, but this would be where that would happen had we had those. And then following that, on page 9, we did run into one thing that we needed to list here as a finding, and that is budget compliance in the debt service fund. And the dollar figures that we're talking about here are very small, but the state auditors often don't look at things that way. It is or it isn't, and I think it was a couple of $100s that the debt service fund was over budget. So we list that here as a finding, and anyway, not a huge, great concern, but a finding nonetheless. So that's all we have for the current year. The following page lists out, as we are required to show the prior year findings and the status. And so the 3 prior year findings are listed there. And we didn't find any issues on the first 2. They were resolved, taken care of, and then that third one was also a budget finding in the prior year, which we've already discussed. So with that, do any of you have any questions?
Any questions? Again, the audit committee made up of myself and Councilman Shelton and our city manager and our finance team. We've viewed the information, and we're very pleased and compliment the staff for their, not just our financial staff, but also our department heads who have to live within those budget restraints and are held accountable. And so as elected officials, whenever we can have an audit that is this clean, we are pleased and appreciate those efforts. For your comments, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you again. All right, referring back to the agenda, I want to turn some time over now to Chief Russo to introduce one of our new honorary colonels.
Well, Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity to introduce to you Mr. Joe Kittrell. Kittrell. And I knew I was going to get it wrong. We were.
But Mark says Kittrell, so you're
absolutely
fine saying it that way.
You're bailing me out, aren't you? Okay,
More than once, I'm sure.
That's right. He's a local defense attorney. He has been practicing for 15 years, 15, yeah. And he's also an adjunct professor at the University of Utah. He is on the board of director for the Big Brothers and Big Sisters organization. And I know he works for the bar, or you're on the board at the bar, Utah State Board.
I've served on some committees. I was director of the criminal law section, which encompasses both prosecutors and defense lawyers.
Well, it's probably best that I let him tell you more about himself than me. But I will tell you about the honorary colonels. They're a not-for-profit group. They support law enforcement. Our group specifically supports Cottonwood Heights Police and its members. They have been part of our organization for many years. They have, without being specific, they've done everything from help members pay bills who had very serious diseases and cancer, to helping members who have found themselves in unfortunate situations. Most of their help is financial, but they support us in many ways. Before I turn the mic over to him, let me just tell you what I know about Joel, because the stuff that's not in his bio or resume, I think speaks, or will just give you a better idea of what he is, what kind of guy he really is. Besides being a skilled defense attorney, we had a very serious case here in Cottonwood Heights, and it had involved a major crime, serious implications, and involved a couple of good families. Just one of those things that the police are called to investigate. And I felt really compelled to stay in touch with the family that we were working with on this case, and I would call them from time to time. And that family were professional people. In fact, one of the members is also in the same business as Joel, and they were scared. They even though that they understood the process, it was a very serious situation. But I called them one day and asked them how they were holding up. And when they were on the phone with me, they said, better now because Joel's here, and Joel's going to take care of everything for our family. And I don't know that there is a better or greater endorsement of someone's skill level than when a family is in a very dark place and then Joel comes on board and seemingly turns it around. Not seemingly, he did turn it around for these people. So I think the world of him. He didn't know I was going to actually talk about that. But I will turn the mic over to him. But before I do that, as part of being part of the honorary colonels, he gets a badge and a little ID card. And I'm most impressed because I just noticed that he has on a Yacht Master 2. And only I or two people in this room would notice that. So congratulations. And thank you.
I assume that's a watch of some kind.
It is. It is.
So I surprised you that I knew that much.
Well,
Joel,
thank you, Chief.
welcome.
Council, thank you. This is my wife, Bonnie Kittrell.
Welcome
And
to both of
I
you.
want to thank her for supporting me in my career. You know, I did not know the chief was going to bring up that incident, but I can tell you in the last year, I have worked with 3 cases defending individuals in the city and working with the police department to get a just result. And one situation, not the one that the chief is speaking of, my client had a loaded gun and he walked out of his residence and he was not listening to the police at the time. The police that responded from Cottonwood Heights would have been justified of taking a shot at him because he wasn't listening and it was in a very threatening position. But the exercise of restraint from Cottonwood Heights Police Department in that event is amazing to me. It just shows you what one of the greatest police departments in the state of Utah can do through training, support, and resources. And I wanted to be an honorary colonel to be able to help continue that because some people have these crises. And giving them that one extra little second was all it took. And the situation resolved peacefully, but it could have ended very poorly for this individual who was going under a crisis. Working with the Cottonwood Heights Police Department in the matter that the chief was bringing up was a great experience because there were 2 families affected in this major crime, and I think both families would feel that they had justice in that case. And that would not have happened. And it doesn't normally happen in a large city like Cottonwood Heights because police sometimes don't have the thought that, maybe we just need to worry about the person that was injured in this case. But in this particular instance, the Cottonwood Heights Police Department really stepped up and they were worried about the entire situation, how it was going to affect everybody. So I want to just commend the Cottonwood Heights Police Department, its leadership. I know that there's some other leaders that are here too. And it was just an amazing experience. My brother, Mark Kittrell, is the Chief Legal Counsel for Salt Lake City Police Department. So I'm going to have to tell him how my badge is prettier than his, and my department that I help with is better than his as well. So thank you.
Joe, thank you and welcome, to both of you.
Thank you.
We appreciate your service. So, as a mayor in my previous life, I spent 4 years developing programs as alternatives to incarceration, which included Third District Drug Court and some of those. So I'm very sensitive, have a personal passion to look at ways to mitigate special situations rather than jail only, because there are alternatives that are even more effective. So appreciate those efforts. And when you mentioned the Boys and Girls Club, being involved with that when it began in 1980s, I think, in the northwest area of our city. So I applaud your efforts working with them too. Very deserving to catch some of those issues early on in young people's lives. So appreciate your service and on many fronts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Good luck. Okay, Robbie, now I think we want to meet a new officer we have in our,
It is. It's my pleasure to introduce a couple of different people to you.
yeah.
Our newest member, and is he behind me? Is Odin behind me with his handler? Or I'm not sure
Here he
who will
comes.
be handling who. But Sergeant Doherty is here with 6-month-old Odin. He is a Dutch Shepherd. He is the newest member of the police department canine unit. And he's a beautiful animal. But these animals are highly trained and specifically bred, and they're very expensive. And we just don't have the resources to actually to buy them and to support the program. But there's a family behind me. If Dr. Kara and Glenn Clapp will come up for just a second. Let me introduce you to these people because they are near and dear to me.
No, he's not very near to you at all. He's actually quite a ways.
And I told you before, never stand next to a tall, skinny person. And if this doesn't just make my point for me. So, yes. But being always ready. Karen and Glenn have been friends of this city since we started the police department. In fact, I can attribute the success of the canine unit, and our canine unit has been instrumental all over the valley. There are agencies that are bigger than us, that have been around longer than us. There are none with a better canine unit than us. We get calls all over the valley every day, and it's something as simple as finding drugs in a car to apprehending an armed fugitive. Our canine unit was involved in, one of the shootings where they killed the dog, and our dog was the one who helped to apprehend, the gunman in that case. And all that was made possible by Dr. Karen and Mr. Clapp here, because they have made donations to the canine unit from the beginning. Everything from buying the dog to when our dogs need vet treatment that is not built into the budget, they've always stepped up. And I don't want to, I'll tell you, it's tens of thousands of dollars that they've given to the city. When they heard, we tweeted that Chip had died, and within minutes, Mr. Clapp is texting me saying, well, what do you need? What can I do? What can I help you with? Within minutes of that tweet going out. And then he has a check that he's going to present to the city. It is for $7,500, which is what we use to buy the new dog. So I'll let them have the mic, and then if I could get a picture, that would be great.
Oh,
and I'll introduce you to our newest best friend.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's Glenn, right?
Yes, it is.
Glenn, please. Yeah.
Well, it is a great honor to present Cottonwood Heights and Chief Robbie and the Cottonwood Heights Police Department this fake check for $7,500. There's a real one you've already got. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be part of the city and the police department and the canine program, and see the amazing work of these amazing animals over the years, saving lives, going into danger, solving crimes, or helping to solve crimes, and providing a great deal of love and face licks. And
Glenn, how many years have you been involved in this type of support? I mean, obviously it's been a while. I mean, just curious.
yeah, about 10 or 12 years.
10, 12 years, yeah.
Yeah, the first dog was with South Jordan. Kara was at a health fair, and they were bringing their two dogs around, and one of them was going to be retired. And Kara said, "Hey, can we help. I said, yeah, let's help with that. And in the time that we decided to help, the second dog also fell ill and had to retire. And they were going to eliminate South Jordan's canine department. So the chief says, but wait, we have this check. So it kept that department alive. And as we kept in touch with departments and created a connection with Cottonwood Heights. We didn't live in Cottonwood Heights at the time. And through Ken Etchell, found out there was a need here. We were able to step in with the first dog for Cottonwood Heights. It's a fraction of what it takes to actually bring a dog into the police force, but it was something. And then we moved to Cottonwood Heights because this is where the dogs are.
Yeah.
And this is the fourth.
Wow.
So we're really very pleased to be able to do this.
Well, Glenn, to you and your wife, Kara, thank you so much. I'd like to come down and shake your hand if I might. Yeah.
And I'm thinking you're getting the short end of the stick because you've got the check. You have to talk. Kara gets to play with the dog.
That's right. Trade you.
This is a friendly one. There was one we helped purchase. I wouldn't get near. He looked like he was ready to bite your face off. But this guy's a lover.
Yeah. He's beautiful.
Should we get a picture?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Let's see if it's come on over.
Thank you for the opportunity. Oh boy, on the furniture.
Come on. We've got a new friend anyhow. Maybe if I frame it this way, we can get Odin in the frame there. Just wait for a minute.
When you squat down.
What's going on? A lot of excitement, huh? Okay. We got at least one. I'm not sure if he was looking, but I got you looking up to already. So one of them. No, it's not. Go with the same. Yeah, everything.
Odin, right?
Odin. Yep.
Odin? Yeah. Welcome, Odin. Yeah, we'll get you a badge later.
So
Thanks again.
How long before Odin is in active duty?
He already started his training last week for narcotics, and probably 4 or 5 months we should have narcotics certification. Probably by the end of summer, bite work will be done.
Will he be competing this year?
Not in the first year, no. No, the other guys are working on that right now. We've still got a little bit of time.
Thank you. Can I keep this?
Yes, this is your. Thank you. We'll do a fresh one.
Thanks.
All right. Karen, Glenn, thank you again very much. Appreciate it. Yeah. Come back and visit us anytime. Yeah. Robbie, and don't take that check home. All right, that's the acknowledgements and special action items tonight. Now we'll move to citizen comment period on our agenda, and I have one comment card. If someone else would like to speak, you're welcome to fill one out. Tim Halbeck, come on up, Tim. Welcome back.
As Henry VIII famously said, to many of his wives, I won't keep you long. Really? Nothing? Okay. Oh, good to see Councilman Shelton still here. Let's see.
Tonight only. Yeah.
One night only.
One
That's
night
right.
only.
That's right. One night only. 2012, someone said this famously. What can I do to help? Any guesses as to who that was? Councilman Shelton. His opening remarks. He's always had, I think, as I recall, your number one priority was the safety of kids, the safety around the schools, putting up the flashing lights, putting on, make sure the striping was done, all that kind of stuff. And especially in District 1, that's always been the case, and so I appreciate that. You said, this is what I stand for, and you did it, and that was all good. Now the more humorous stuff. So I talked to your wife earlier, and she said you were looking in the mirror the other day, and you're like, I'm aging, I'm graying, my hairline's kind of receding, I'm putting on a little...
See, I already know this isn't true, because if you know me, you know I rarely look in the mirror, so.
He said, I'm putting on a little weight, I could really use a compliment. And she said, your vision is 20/20. All right, there you go. Tough crowd, I tell you. Is this on? Is this on? Yeah. Good luck in your next job, whatever the next thing is. I'm sure that the pay will certainly be better. Yeah. Okay, so now talk some real business. So I've done some things with the Open Space Committee, and I've did some things in a couple of different parks. And I got to say, for a committee that's been around for as long as it has, and for one of the primary missions being, let's find a space for a dog park and let's do something with dog park kind of thing, it just hasn't gone anywhere, in my opinion. There's been progress. It's like we evaluate this, we evaluate this, we evaluate this, but it's not done yet, right? We're going to disagree. That's fine. And there's been some, what's the Mountain View, on certain days or on certain events, we'll have some things like that. I'm just not seeing the event, so I'm not seeing the progress there, so.
Well, I encourage you, and we'll get back with you to check with Tim. You'll see some other things that have happened.
Recent things?
Since you haven't been around last.
Okay, the last couple months. All right, okay, well, I'll drop that then. Maybe there's things.
A couple things we're looking at.
Okay, good. Well, and that brings me to the next part, which is the information. So the amount of information since the website, totally different subject. Since the website changed, the amount of information available is considerably less than it used to be. For example, the meeting minutes for this meeting and for other meetings like this have been reduced to 12 months back. I don't know why that was. I don't know what that was. I would like to see all that information restored. I would like to see there be everything from the beginning as much as possible, rather than it being reduced. I don't know when that happened. It happened sometime in the last 3 months, but I don't know exactly when. So I would really appreciate that stuff being restored.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll get back with you on both those items, give you a little bit of update on both of them. All right, thanks, Tim. Anyone else who would like to speak during our citizen comment period? Hearing none, we'll close citizen comments and move to public comment. And we have two issues. And the first issue we'd like to take public comment on is item 4.1, which is a Little Willow Circle flag lot setback exception. And Mike Johnson, let you introduce that and see if there's any public comment on that issue.
Thank you, Mayor. I gave a kind of a full briefing in the work session. This has been in front of the Planning Commission as well. This is a request for a subdivision standards exception. The exact exception being requested here is a reduction in the flag lot setback requirements, which are found in the subdivision ordinance of the city. To provide some context, this property is a fairly recent flag lot, which means a lot that does not have direct access on any dedicated road. It's accessed via, as you can see, a long private drive. There are two lots in this new subdivision. This is called, I believe, the Little Willow subdivision. So two new lots, both are now under construction, but when this home was originally constructed, there was no development in the area. It was new. There we go. As you can see here, a house has been substantially constructed on the lot. Again, context here. One important thing to point out, we're jumping all over here, is that the grading of the lot slopes substantially from the front of this house down to the rear. So from, I don't know what's going on, from east to west, the changing grade is drastic. What we see here, this is just jumping all over. Can you just do this for me, Tim? The one with the site plan. Keep going. One more. No, one more, sorry. One more. There we go. Okay. In November of 2018, a building permit was reviewed and issued for this house. The approval was based on the site plan submitted to the city. The site plan was certified by a civil engineer. The property was surveyed and and the home was verified to comply with all flag lot setbacks and building requirements. On a flag lot, the setback requirement is 20 feet on all sides of the property. Go to the next slide, please. About a year later, in September of 2019, we received a letter of concern from the owner of the property directly to the north, the other undeveloped flag lot in this subdivision that was just getting ready to begin construction on his home. And he raised the concern that he felt the setbacks in the home that was at this point substantially constructed were not in compliance with what was approved on the approved site plan and building permit. A stop work was issued on the home to investigate this. Some survey work was done, and the results do confirm that as the home was constructed, it does not comply with that 20-foot setback requirement. At its closest point, it's only about 9.5 feet away from the adjacent property line rather than 20. We went back and checked our inspection records. The setbacks are generally verified at footing inspection, which is one of the first inspections. Our inspector for the city on every home relies on survey stakes matching the engineered surveyed site plan that's approved. And those stakes were in place. And at the time, we had no reason to believe that they were inaccurate. As the home was constructed and the subdivision was developed, it did become apparent that there was an issue. We don't know where the issue was caused. The city followed its procedures that it does on all homes, but now we have a home that's substantially constructed and its setback does not meet minimum standards. A variance was explored by the applicant, but the criteria for approving variances are very strict and limited, and this was not a good candidate for that. So this subdivision exception provision in Title 12 of the City Code was discovered and utilized. This has been utilized in a few other instances in the city. This requires the City Council to make exceptions to Title 12, to the subdivision standards, based on multiple criteria. And, while the home was already built, it's a difficult situation for the city. It's difficult for the property owner, for the adjacent property owner. We felt this was the best path forward, so the applicant made that application. By far the most impacted, probably the only impacted party by this particular setback issue is the adjacent property owner building his home on the property to the north. He submitted a letter prior to the Planning Commission public hearing, which took place a couple weeks ago, supporting the approval of this setback exception. He and the owner of this subject property have discussed things civilly and have come to some consensus and terms of agreement, and he is supportive of the setback exception. Everything else, building height, grading, retention on the lot, all has to be done right, is not really affected by the location of the home. So concerns in those regards are not really impacted by where the home is, whether it's here or 20 feet away. We feel as staff that this project, especially given the support received from the affected adjacent property owner, is a good candidate for this setback exception, especially given the alternative. The alternative is costly, it's wasteful, and it ultimately is not good for the property owner, for the city, and it's not something that we want to see here. Next slide, Tim, thanks. Because of those findings, we are recommending approval of this subdivision ordinance exception to grant a setback reduction on the north side of this flag lot property. The Planning Commission took public comments on this at its last meeting. They voted to recommend approval to the council by a vote of 5-0. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you for the introduction during our meeting right now and for the briefing we had in our work session prior. This is public comment time, so anyone who would like to speak to this issue, now is the time. Hearing none, any further comments from the council? Okay, we'll move to the next item on public comment. So Mike, you want to come back up and talk about introduce the zone map amendment on Royal Lane?
Thanks again. This is another land use application we received that's been through Planning Commission. This is a request to amend the zoning designation of 8120 South Royal Lane. This is currently in the RR 143 zone. This is residential, rural, single family. The current zoning requires a minimum of 1 acre for any new lot. The existing parcel is 1.19 acres. The request is to amend the zoning to RR 121, again, residential rural density, single family, but reduces that minimum lot size to 1/2 of an acre. Next slide, please. Keep going. That's good. The existing land use, which is the first thing we look at to formulate recommendations as we review these applications, is rural residential density. So the long-range vision for this area is that rural residential density. The proposed rezone does not affect that. So RR 143 and RR 121 are both compliant and compatible with that rural residential density. These are very low density lots that have animal rights. I think that's the best way to make the distinction between these and standard low density zones. You can see the context, the existing zoning on the right. Much of the surrounding area is already in the 1/2 acre zoning designation. There are a handful of properties that are the brighter green that are in 1 acre zoning. The property directly to the north is actually a utility property owned by Salt Lake City. It's a water source protection parcel. There is one property directly to the west that is 1 acre right now, and a few properties to the southwest that are in the 1 acre zone that are not currently 1/2 acre or 1 acre in size. Next slide, please. So this provides some context. I do apologize. The subject parcel here is mislabeled. It is not quite that large. It's, again, 1.19 acres. But this shows the context in the area. The only other parcel that is 1 acre or more in size is directly to the west. All the others are 1/2 acre or smaller. What that means is the applicant could potentially subdivide this from 1 lot into 2 lots, but nothing more than that. Would have to follow standard subdivision process, meet all building code for any building that's constructed there, and go through an administrative process to accomplish any further work or development on these sites. Next slide, please. Keep going. For that reason, we feel this recommendation merits approval, so that is our recommendation. Fits within the context of the area and is compliant with the general plan and the land use map designation of the city's general plan. The Planning Commission did take public comment on this, received a 5-to-1 vote recommending approval to the City Council. Tonight it's only up for public comment. It will come back at the next meeting for final action.
Thank you, Mike, again for that introduction. Anyone would like to make public comment on the zone map amendment on 8120 South Royal Lane? Come on up. Appreciate it.
My name is Mohammed.
Well, pull the mic down so we hear you. Thank you.
Mohammed Purkazmi. I'm the owner of that parcel. My initial goal is to give it to my daughter, my only kid I have. And I am willing to work with the homeowners association to please their requirements. Well, thank you for approving.
All right, welcome. Thank you. Any additional comments on this item? Any further comments from the council? Hearing none, we'll close public comment period and we'll move to our action items. We have just 3 or 4. And Ken, thank you for your patience and staying here and joining us tonight. The first action item is consideration of Ordinance 335, adopting an annual meeting schedule for 2020. This basically states our meeting schedule for this council, which is on the 1st and 3rd Tuesday of each month. So, Councilman Shelton, you might want to note that if your board want to come spend some time with us.
I think he needs to make the motion because.
Yeah.
Or I could vote no.
Yeah. Also, on our annual schedule for meetings, talks about the Planning Commission, which is primarily on Wednesday night monthly, but on January and December, I think it changed a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's modified slightly due to holidays on the
yeah.
calendar.
Yeah, and it also has a schedule for our architectural review. I think it's those the three areas are on this this ordinance. Any comments or discussion from the council? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I move that we approve ordinance 335.
It's been moved by Councilman Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Bracken. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. Councilman Shelton.
Yes.
Councilman Bracken. Yes. Councilman Bruce is excused. Councilman Michael. Councilmember Michael. Ooh, I did that again.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Next item is Resolution 2019-78, approving an exception to certain requirements for a subdivision lot located at 8564 South Little Willow Circle. That was an item we were briefed on just a moment ago and took public comment with none. Any questions, any further questions from the council? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for adoption.
I move that we approve resolution 2019-78.
It's been moved by Councilman Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Michael. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Okay, our last item of business is approving appointments to the city's historic committee. Those who are aware of the actions of our historic committee, they've been involved over the years in putting signage throughout our city, identifying historic areas in the history of our city, drafting or facilitating the drafting of a history of our city. You'll see books out in the lobby and numerous other things. So I'm excited to have this committee continue to be invigorated by additional members and those existing members. So Tim, I'll turn it to you and let you introduce the three people who we are proposing to appoint.
Yes, we're proposing reappointments of Jim Kitches, who's the chair, actually, of the committee. Appreciate his service and his expertise. And then also Alan Erickson. So both of those members, they're doing a great job. It's a great committee. They're doing wonderful projects and really passionate about their work. And then I had the opportunity, appreciate Ken being here, sitting down and talking with him and his desire to serve on this committee. He has such a wealth of background and service that will add so much value to what they do. And I'm excited to recommend appointment of him and appreciate his willingness to serve. And anyway, that is the recommendation before you.
Right. Ken, so thank you for your willingness to serve. I've known Ken for many, many years, and he's definitely going to make the committee stronger, and he makes the city always look good and has for decades. I think he's been a resident for over 30 years. So welcome and thank you, and for your service on ZAP and those other areas that you work on as well. Yeah. So welcome. Any further discussion on these nominations? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I move that we approve resolution 2019-79.
It's been moved by Councilmember Shelton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Bracken. Any further discussion? And then I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Shelton.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The last item is approval of minutes for the city council meetings of November 5th, 2019. I'd entertain a motion. It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. It's passed. Move Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we don't adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion not to adjourn. We have a motion for somebody to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn and let Marcel go home.
We have a second? We don't have a second. We're adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Appreciate it.